Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you.
How are you? How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you tonight, Taryn?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. I know it's Sunday and I know it's, probably a busy time for you right now. But I appreciate you giving me some time again. I wanted
yeah,
you to come
absolutely.
on and talk about your book and everything and how that's going and all your stuff because I have a couple of your books, and I think you're an amazing writer.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate you coming on. Um, so without that, I want to stop talking because I'm sure everybody that's watching would rather hear you. Um,
Oh, take it away, Taryn.
so let's talk a little bit about you for those that are watching but wouldn't know you. I don't know who wouldn't, but just in case, if you could introduce yourself for everybody, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Mike Ricksecker, and I do stuff. Um,
I do so. I
yeah,
do a lot of stuff. You should say I do a lot of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I'm primarily an author. This recent book here, Travels Through Time, is my 13th. Um, so I've been at it for quite a while. In fact, I'm going to post this here pretty soon. I signed my first book contract 20 years ago this month. So
Wow.
it was later on in September 2003 that I signed the first book contract, and that was actually a mystery novel. So I've been doing this quite a while. Um, yeah, I've been on some of the different television shows like Ancient Aliens, The Unexplained, The Haunted, The Alaska Triangle, things like that. Um, I do
You amazing
presentations. I
work.
have my docu-series, The Shadow Dimension. So I'm also a filmmaker. I've done a lot of stuff. So,
You have, and everything's been so amazing. Like, everything you do, and because it's not fake, it's not like, over dramatized. I mean, you bring, the facts, the historical stuff, the
mhm.
educate, almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes it can be kind of like, the show Unexplained, right? Where they
Mhm.
talk about like the mysteries behind, the factual historical stuff, but there's also these
Yeah.
mysteries, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When I present different things like in my books or whether it's on one of my YouTube videos or something like that, it's like, okay, here's the strange stuff that I've discovered about it. It could be this or this. There could be a logical explanation to it, but here's the supernatural idea behind it as well. And so, yeah, and in a lot of cases, we're dealing with a lot of different types of phenomena. Something could have a logical explanation. Something could be a haunting. Something could be an ET, whatever. A lot of times people try to take a particular type of incident and just categorize everything into there. It's like, no, we're dealing with a lot of different stuff here.
Right. Now, Mike, do you investigate or do you just kind of write books
Yeah.
about people's experiences or your experiences or something? You know what I mean? Like, are you
Yeah, I've done a lot of investigations over the years. I don't as much anymore because my schedule just doesn't
right?
really adhere to it these days. But so on occasion, it might be a handful of times a year these days. But yeah, back in the day, you were so people who have been following. I saw Cat Gash down there, Craig Allen. They probably watched some of my old YouTube videos from like 8, 10 years ago, where
Mhm.
they're full blown huge investigation videos. So yeah, I used to do a lot of that back in the day.
That's awesome. So now, Do you still use some of that stuff with today with how you kind of you're right or your
Mhm.
experiences and what you've learned and everything like that? Do you
Yeah. A lot of those experiences really come into play in the different topics that I write about. Like even with this one, where we're talking time travel, a lot of those different experiences that I had as an investigator crop up right in the middle of the book. So, yeah, I mean, it's investigating the paranormals. I would say is where I got my start, but I've expanded that because it's just one piece of the entire puzzle. So it's like, um, yeah, I'm trying to figure out the whole thing,
right,
and
right.
investigating the paranormal is a piece of it. But it's something that I still, of course, respect. I still do from time to time, and it gave me a foundation for where I'm at today.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, like I said, your the stuff you do is awesome. Like I
Mhm.
love it. I fully support it all. You know, I'm always
Thank you.
sharing your stuff. I love everything that you do. You know, um, oopsie. With that being said, let's talk about your time travel book that you had that came out recently, and um, where this all came up. You know, and how well it's doing, and
Mhm.
everything like that.
Yeah, it's just time travel is something I've always had an interest in, ever since I was a kid, and I mentioned it at the very beginning, of the book. The movie travels through time, or I'm sorry, the movie travels through time. Nice, that's the name of your book, Michael. The movie,
Say, wait, what?
the movie Somewhere in Time. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Jeez, it's had a lot going on here lately. It's been a busy weekend. Um,
I hear you.
Yeah, Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour. Absolutely love that movie as a kid, and just the idea that he was able to will his consciousness from the present into the past in 1912, so that he could meet this woman. I mean, it's primarily a love story, but it has a really, really fascinating time travel component to it, and I believe Richard Matheson, the writer, was really onto something there, and a lot of his research that went into that story. Aside from the movie, there was the book that he wrote that preceded it, which has been renamed to Somewhere in Time because everybody knows that as the movie, but it was originally called Bid Time Return, and it's a little bit different than the way the movie plays out. It's a different setting. Some storyline elements are a little bit different, but the base of it is the same. And he has his character Richard go to the library and actually check out like real books that discuss the aspects of time. So when I was researching my book that I've written here, I went and found those books. And just upon reading them, I'm like, oh, this is where Matheson got his ideas for how this story plays out. So, so yeah, that was a big influence for me. Something that always stuck with me ever since a kid. I was a kid, and over the years, as I've performed paranormal investigations, I've written books, and these sorts of things. I've noticed glimpses of, this has a time element to it, or this might actually be some form of time travel or what have you. And so I've taken those experiences, mixed it with science and metaphysics, and what I've been telling people is like there's a lot of science in this book, but it's not too sciencey, and there's a lot of metaphysics in this book, but it's not too metaphysical, and you blend it together with all the anecdotal stories, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this book that I've put together.
So, what was your biggest inspiration for the book? The movie, you would say? The movie or
That was certainly a big part of it. So the way the book came to fruition was, originally I was going to write a book called Connecting the Universe. Now I have my Connected Universe portal, which is an online learning platform. I have my Connecting the Universe podcast. I'm trying to brand everything along that. And so Connecting the Universe was going to take a lot of different aspects and elements of things that I've been investigating, putting together, a lot of different subjects from across different areas. So, okay, time travel is one of them. A lot of the research that I've been doing out in Egypt, Atlantis, consciousness, of course, aspects of the supernatural and paranormal. This is all going to be one massive book. And this past February, when we were out in Egypt, there's one particular day we had a little bit of downtime, and I did this like 2.5 hour presentation. It was massive. Wasn't intended to be that long, but we had the time, so we just went with it. I'm like, "You guys sure you want me to keep going?" Yeah, yeah, keep going. So did this whole huge presentation, and then afterward had lunch, and then we were headed out to one of the temples. And on that drive, it just like hit me that now connecting the universe is not one book. It is a series of several books, and take the major topics and break them out into each of their own books. And I decided to go with time and time travel as like a base to work from. Let's talk about the inner workings of the universe first before we get into some of these other topics.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, now, do you believe in time travel?
Oh yeah.
And then now in your book, now this is just for people that might be interested, but do you interview people that have experienced time travel?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like cut and dry. Like we jumped into a DeLorean with a flux capacitor and zoomed off at 88 miles per hour. It's really not that sort of thing. I believe real time travel is going to be less about technology and more about the consciousness. It's going to be more about
Sure.
ourselves. So, there have been plenty of people who have experienced something like a time slip, which really is a form of time travel, and probably
That
one
was
of the
going to be my next question. If you think
yep.
time slips could be time travel, even though you don't travel any, or it doesn't seem like you travel anywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, but that's because of the way the nature of time works. I propose something in the book called stacked time theory, which is this idea that time doesn't really exist. It is a human construct. It's a tool that we use to keep track of the seasons, when to plant the crops, when to show up at work at the right moment, so our supervisors and bosses don't get upset and we get fired. That sort of thing, right? So it's helpful in our daily life. But it's really, even Einstein said this, time is just an illusion. It doesn't really exist. Um, so with stacked time theory, you take every moment that, just like where you're sitting right now, every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen are all happening concurrently at the same time. And each of those moments are stacked on top of each other like a stack of photographs. Now, we don't really understand what the catalyst is, but there are times where two of those moments resonate at the same frequency. They have that same vibration in that moment. And we suddenly get a glimpse of something. And that would be like your time slip. And, fantastic story. And a lot of people, in your chat room here are going to be familiar with the Conjuring House. And you've been there, right? Pretty
No,
sure you have. You haven't.
I was supposed to go, but it was at the height of COVID, and my boss at the time said if I went, I lose my job. So
Ah, okay.
yeah, I just skip
Because
all that.
I know several of your friends
Sadly.
have, so I
Yeah,
thought you were in on
I was
that.
supposed to. I
Ah,
was supposed to go, but
okay. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell the story anyway,
yes, please.
because it's a fascinating house. It really, really is. And of course, we know that the story of what really happened there is far different than what they showed in the movie. And through all of those events that happened over 10 years, even Andrea will say, of all of that stuff, the most amazing thing that ever happened was one night Andrea was up doing homework, and it was just after, like a few weeks after the seance that had gone bad. And Carolyn got up, and she was hungry, wanted some coffee, that sort of stuff. And so Andrea was happy to go make it. So Carolyn sits down in the parlor, which is right next to the dining room. There's a couple of doors that open up, and it's out into the dining room, and that's where the seance that went wrong happened. And Carolyn got knocked back into the parlor. So Carolyn's sitting in the parlor now, and she's looking out into this dining room. And all of a sudden, what morphs into existence is some sort of scene out of the 1700s. There's this woman cooking over the hearth. Now, this is a fireplace at the time that was all boarded up, been boarded up for like 100 years. A couple of kids running around. And then there's two gentlemen sitting at a table with pewter steins. And they turn and they look at Carolyn. The one gentleman says to the other, "Well, would you look at that?" As if Carolyn was the ghost. And then the scene just dissipated away. And it's a truly fascinating story because not only was Carolyn getting a glimpse of the past, but the past, those guys were actually getting a glimpse of the future. So everything was right there, all of it.
So
It
cool.
was just it it just tuned into the right frequency for a brief moment, and they could see each other.
Wouldn't it have been cool if she could continue to listen to that conversation? Like, imagine what they were saying. Like, what was that? Did you see that? What was that girl wearing? Like, what the conversation would have been.
Yeah, the follow-up on that,
Yeah.
would be truly fascinating, truly amazing, yeah.
Yeah, just to hear. It reminds me of the movie The Others.
Yes, very, very much like The Others, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
and I used to relate it to that, and that's one of the interestingly enough, I make a lot of pop culture references, throughout the book, and that is one I actually did not, and it's funny because when I would tell that story, a lot of times I would relate it to The Others, so shame on me.
That's one of my favorite movies. Like, because I literally did, and people are all like, some people are like, oh yeah, I know, but the ending surprised just the crap out of me.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you
I
didn't
had
see
no
that
idea. I
coming. You knew
didn't see
something
that
was
coming.
yeah, you knew something was really off, but
Right,
you
but
didn't see that, yeah.
yeah, the whole time I'm thinking, like they're the ghosts, you know what I mean? And they're being haunted, and it's like, then at the end you're like, oh my gosh, like what if that's really what
Right.
it is, And I was gonna ask you, so I'm glad that you talked about that because I was gonna ask you if you think the spirit world does they time slip. So
Yeah,
example,
go ahead.
example, like I like to ask people the question, like, what was the one time that you had an experience that you were not ghost hunting or not looking for it? Because I had an experience at work one time and I was totally
Mhm.
not in paranormal mode at all. I was wanting to go home. It was the end of the night. And I heard a woman say, "What is this place?"
Oh,
And
okay.
that was it. That was it.
Interesting.
It's an older building, but that was it. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear
Mhm.
walking. I didn't hear any follow up. I walked around, looked for somebody, yelled. I was the only one there.
Okay.
So it, but that's all. And I heard it loud. It was loud. It wasn't a whisper.
Mhm.
It was like somebody was standing on the other side of my desk, but I didn't see them.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it could have been I mean, we're going off a little bit of information here.
Sure.
I mean, it could have been a time slip, because you didn't see her or anything, right? It was
No, I
you
didn't
just
see
heard
anything.
it. Yeah.
Just heard it.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been. Maybe she slipped into your time, saw, your office play out in front of you, and was like, "Yeah, what is
What is?
this?" And then yeah,
Yeah.
and then
I mean, I
zoomed
tried
back.
afterwards after I realized that was something, you know, because it is, but your mind just goes through the natural progression of Q&A in yourself, because you're
Yeah.
like, did I just hear that? What did I hear? Was that a person? Even though you're by yourself at that moment, you're getting up and you're like, hello, hello, like, is anybody here? Then I realized I was alone. So I'm like, it's a doctor's office. Do you need help? Like trying to get a
Right, yeah.
bit more. And I got nothing. But sometimes I wonder if that happens. The intelligence responses, are they
Sure.
really like active in this space with us, or are they slipping? Are they coming into our?
Yeah, I think there's multiple answers here. It's hard to say, you know, this is the one answer. I don't think it's like a one size fits all. So I think some of the things that we see and experience on investigations, or even like with you, just kind of randomly in the office, and we see or hear or experience something. I think some of them are slips. I think some of them certainly are spirits that are trapped. They no longer have the physical body. It's so our consciousness resides within the fourth dimension, and it's right now as we're alive, it's within a third dimensional body. So it makes us multidimensional
Mhm.
uh, entities, which is fascinating. But when we lose that third dimensional shell, our consciousness still exists on that plane. Excuse me.
Okay.
Told you I was sort of kind of recovering here from a lot of talking lately, which is great.
Which is a good thing.
But it's a good thing. It's definitely a good thing. But yeah, so on that dimension, we call that dimension time. That's our definition for the fourth dimension is actually time, but that's where our consciousness resides. So when we lose the body, sometimes we excuse me, sometimes we move on to that higher plane of existence, that higher uh dimensionality, but at other times we hang out here for a while, but just without the third dimensional body attached to it. So some of them certainly are spirits. Um, Sometimes we're experiencing an interdimensional being that's from maybe somewhere else across the cosmos. Sorry,
You're fine.
um, or from some other dimension. We have up to 11 dimensions per our theoretical physics. So anything that's above us, 5, 6, 7, 8 on upward, um, we don't really think about it a lot of times, but there are other beings and entities that are likely living within those other dimensions, and them being above us, would have access to time freely. So, like with us being within the fourth dimension, we have free access to every dimension that's below us, third, second, first. Um, Even zero, which is actually, that one's debated as to whether a zero dimension exists, but some physicists say there is a zero dimension, which is just a point, perhaps. Um, so those other ones above us have free access to our dimension as if it was almost like an object. And so some of these entities are able to come and go as they please. So there's a lot of things to consider here. It's not just like one answer.
Right. And this has got to be one of a very difficult thing for people who really want to research this and maybe try to prove it happens or it exists. Because how do you record such an event when you don't know it's going to happen?
Right. Yeah, that's the hard part.
Make it
We don't
happen.
we don't yeah, yeah, we don't exactly know what the catalyst is.
Right.
We know it has something to do with energy, something to do with frequency, resonance, vibration, that sort of thing. I mean, you have scientists in the lab that are working with these things. They're trying to create wormholes in the lab and stuff like that. And in fact, there was a scientific team that last year was able to create on the quantum level a small wormhole in the lab. So they're working on these things. Yeah, and we see them happen. And what I believe is that you're basically having a lining up of different frequencies, between your personal resonance, the resonance and frequency of our moment here in time, and then that has to line up with another moment in time. So, and that's the trick. It's like, okay, I could probably try to get my resonance to resonate at the same frequency as this moment, but how do I do that with another moment? What's the frequency of that? Um, so I think that's kind of the trick. But like with something like the Conjuring house, there, people are familiar with the well room that's in the basement, and that is directly below the parlor where this time slip happened. Time slip incident happened. What's interesting about the well room, yeah, it's called the well room because there's an open well with water in it right now. Of course, water being a conductor of electromagnetic energy.
Right.
Well, the walls of that room are constructed of limestone and they're capped with granite blocks. So it's like a perfect little power plant down there for harnessing energy within the building. In fact, this is like construction. I mean, no, the well room does not look like the Great Pyramids and things like that, but it's a type of construction that we see in places like ancient Egypt, where you have that combination of limestone and granite with water nearby. So and we know that they were harnessing energy from the ground at these locations for a variety of different purposes, whether it was healing, entering into altered states of consciousness, perhaps projection in travel. That is something that's also been postulated as well. Here it is in the basement of the Conjuring house.
Right. Um, do you also find that hypnotists, like hypnotizing or being hypnotized, and you're going back to events, or do you think that could possibly also be time travel, time slips? Do you think that's a way? Megan kind of was asking this, so
Yeah,
it made me think. Like, do people who time travel develop the ability themselves, or are the devices there help? Like, I'm wondering, like, if hypnosis, when you're going, whether you're going to try to find a past life, whether
right.
people get hypnotized to do that, people get hypnotized to, for tragic events to try to help find. I'm just throwing it out there, but I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting is, if we're going along with the idea of stacked time theory, that means your past life is actually playing out right now, just on a different frequency. So you're actually tuning into a life that you are currently living. It's just at another point in the stack of time. which is certainly fascinating. But yeah, I think it has more to do with meditation and consciousness than, again, like a DeLorean, a flux capacitor, or some sort of time machine or something like that. And it's now I think that we could probably use something like crystals or something like that to try to tune your frequency to different vibrations. And a good example of this is it's actually known as a doppelganger incident. The famous poet Goethe. Um, and he wrote about this in his work Dichtung und Wahrheit, or it's Poetry and Truth in English. And he was walking down the road one day to Trossenheim, which is a town in Germany. He was having an affair with a young woman. And as he's walking down the road, he's just kind of lost in his own thoughts. He's kind of zoning out, as we would say. Kind of like when we're, driving down a long stretch of road and we just kind of zone out and we miss our turn, right? It's a type of meditative state. And so this is essentially what he was doing when he was walking down the road to this town. And all of a sudden, he noticed on the other side of the road, there was this man in a gold trimmed gray suit. And as he turned to get a better look at this guy, all of a sudden, the guy just disappeared, vanished right in front of him. He's like, what in the world was that? What did I just see? He didn't understand, what had happened there, but he couldn't do anything about it. So he continued on to Dorsenheim. Well, a couple of years later, he's walking down that same road again in the opposite direction. And all of a sudden, as he gets to that spot where he had seen this incident happen before, he looked down and noticed, wait a minute, I'm the guy in the gold trimmed gray suit. I actually saw myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is absolutely fascinating. So, if you do a Google search, you'll find that under all kinds of lists of doppelganger instances, but it's not really a
Yeah.
doppelganger case. It's and people say, well, he saw himself. Yeah, but it's really a time slip. He saw himself at another point in time, and I think what happened here is, as he was lost in thought, as he was zoning out, his body, his frequency was able to tune into himself at another point in time. His frequency recognized his own vibration, tuned into that, and saw himself at another point in time right there. And as he turned to look at himself, it kind of broke that meditative state, and then he seemingly disappeared. But yeah, more about consciousness, meditation, that sort of thing.
It almost sounds like, much like how we put everything under that paranormal umbrella, it almost sounds like this time travel, time slips, time stacks, all this stuff kind of all is under the same umbrella. Like it can be, you can contribute a lot of paranormal experiences or paranormal happenings or things that happen to people to, if there's the possibility of this happening, it could be contributed to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I was, first started writing the book, Connecting the Universe, before I decided to break it out into several books, and now it's a Connecting the Universe series. But yeah, there was a story that was related to me a couple of years ago as a shadow person story, because of all my work with shadow people and the book A Walk in the Shadows. And basically the story was that this young man had reported that when he was a child, he had walked into the kitchen and he saw over by the kitchen table this tall, dark, hooded figure. Scared him to death. He ran out of the room, and he thought he had seen a hooded shadow figure. Well, when he was a bit older, young man now, he's at the kitchen table making a sandwich. He's wearing a hoodie, and all of a sudden he notices coming through the doorway to the kitchen a short little shadow person come in, stop, and boom, takes right back off. And he realizes, oh my God, that was me. I saw myself, that whole time. It wasn't, some other entity or something nefarious or whatever. It was me. And so, this is a type of time slip, but it showed up as a shadow rather than like, a full blown apparition or himself completely projected or whatever. And I think that's because, okay, we're talking about tuning into frequency, resonance, vibration. And it's kind of like, almost like you would tune into a radio. And those that are our age, remember that radios used to have knobs to try to tune into the station.
Yeah.
And, if you got it on there perfectly, everything came in crystal clear. But if you're a little bit before the channel or a little bit after, then it come in fuzzy and staticky and that sort of thing. I think that's what happened in this case. Yes, he was tuned into himself a bit in that moment, but not quite well enough, and it only came off as a shadow rather than a full figure of himself.
Interesting. Um, I told you about my shadow thing that happened, didn't I?
You probably did.
In when I was on vacation. When I was on vacation, it was what I could the only way I can describe it is he looked like, and I say he just because whatever, but he looked like the guy in American Horror Story, the first season. The guy in the
You told me. Yes, you did tell me about this. Yeah,
that was crazy, Mike.
yeah.
I never had experience, like I couldn't hear the whole entire time, and then
Hmm.
as soon as it left, like that's when I could hear again. That's the only thing I could think of why I wasn't hearing, but it was
Yeah,
good.
and something about the environment certainly changed. Yeah.
Yeah. So so the, so okay. Here Joe Fox says, "Can I manifest alien sightings or contact?" I guess with that being said, what I want to say is, would let's just say, like you say, he zoned out and stuff like that, right?
Hmm.
My question was going to be, and Joe kind of like is asking the same thing, like subconsciously, could we be manifesting these things?
Um, yeah, I mean, put it out there. Excuse me. We put it out there to the universe. Can I manifest alien sightings or contacts? So, if you're trying to get the ETs to come, yeah, you can put it out there and try to ask them to come into our plane of existence, that sort of thing. Of course, the other way to look at it is, are we, some of these aliens and ETs, and are we generating our own phenomena that we're seeing? And in some ways, I think so. Again, it's not like a one size fits all. So I do believe that there are certainly other entities, other beings from other planets that are coming here and visiting us. And I believe some of them physical craft coming here. I believe some of them are using something like an Einstein-Rosen bridge or a wormhole, like we were talking about before. And I think some of them are traveling here interdimensionally. So yeah, it's just not one complete answer to it, but yeah, I think if you can certainly manifest these sorts of things, you're putting that sort of energy out into the world and asking it to be returned.
Don't get any ideas, Joe. We don't want like what was
It
that
just
movie?
yeah, just don't start the invasion.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Um, uh, let me see here. So Roger said, "Remember the movie Frequency?" I feel like I remember hearing that, but I don't know if I ever saw it. About the guy who talked to a guy from the past on a ham radio.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either.
I don't know
I
if I
have heard
saw
of
that.
it, but haven't yet watched it. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember hearing. I remember. I feel like I remember that, but I did not see it, so I can't comment on that.
yeah. But would that be possible if you tuned into the right frequency? Possibly. Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's the type of energy that we're talking about is on the same frequency as radio waves,
Right.
but it's on some sort of frequency, so could be possible.
Mark says, "Hey, Mike, I think I saw your shadow once. Your booth was in full sunshine at Ferry Plantation."
Yeah, that was a while ago. Yep.
Hi, Mark. Let me see here. So, Kat says, "Question for Mike: What opinion do you have of the incident known as the Philadelphia experiment, and was it both teleportation and time travel?"
Um,
First of all, what's the difference between the two? Because to me, like not being educated on the subject, I would think that was the same thing, just a,
well, I mean, you could teleport. I mean, it's a type of both are a type of travel. You could teleport, however, from just say where you're sitting right now to the Colosseum in Rome, but still stay on the same timeline. So in that sense, you wouldn't be.
that would be
Uh,
cool.
that would be cool. Yeah. Um, yeah. So
I want
it's
to I want to time travel to Brad Pitt's house.
So I'll say this: like time travel would be a type of teleportation, but teleportation would not necessarily be a type of time travel. Um,
So what is the like,
yeah.
what is the difference?
So with time travel, you're actually, I mean, you're actually moving to another point in time.
Okay.
So you're, yeah,
Teleporting would just
uh,
be me moving
from one
out.
place to another, but you could
Right.
move from one place to another in time as well.
Right. So
So
with that,
it's a difference of you move of traveling from here to the Roman Colosseum now, staying on this point in time, or you moving to the Colosseum and all of a sudden finding yourself in the middle of a gladiator fight,
oh my
a couple
gosh.
thousand years ago.
Then how would you get out? I would freak out. I would have to know how to get
Yeah,
out.
run.
Run. I know. That would be crazy. I'm sorry. I'm looking. Can you give me 1 second? I gotta
Sure.
let my cat out of here.
Uh-oh.
Hold on 1 second. She's looking
But
at
as
me.
far as while you're doing that, I'll kind of
Go
talk a
ahead.
little bit more about
All right, good.
Philadelphia experiment here. Okay. Um,
Come on.
so it would be nice to see something official on the Philadelphia experiment. So now it's like, okay, we have different stories, we have um, movies and things like that talking about it. Do I think it's possible? Yeah. I talked about this actually a little bit in my previous book, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, with some of these like disappearing planes and things like that they may have passed through some sort of portal. Like for instance, missing Douglas Skymaster, 1950, and there are a lot of people who believe that because it's never been found, not a shred of evidence, and even a plane that went down a few weeks later around the area where that plane was, they last heard contact. Smaller plane, they found it right away, but still no evidence of the Skymaster. So a lot of people believe that it actually passed through some sort of portal, but they never really get to the point of explaining, okay, if it went through a portal, then where did it go? And so one of the things that I've postulated, aside from the possibility it could have passed into another dimension somewhere,
Hmm.
so it could have still been with us, but on in a realm that we can't normally see with our own eyes, like fifth, sixth, seventh dimension, what have you. But another idea is that it passed through this portal to another point in time. So, let's say it went back in time. They'll just throw an arbitrary number out there. Let's say it went back in time like 500 years. Well, what would the indigenous people of the area at the time, which would be the Inuit tribes of Alaska, what would they think about seeing suddenly this large, huge airplane in the sky? They have no context, they wouldn't 500 years ago, of an airplane. The only thing that they would know about being in the sky would be birds. And here's something that's huge, massive, very loud. So is this where some of our Thunderbird legends come from? Our missing planes from our time going back into the past.
Yeah, like what if that's like, all the planes that went missing through the Bermuda Triangle, or like, what
Yeah,
I mean? Like you said, you know what I mean? Like, did they just did they get stuck there?
yeah, Flight 19, and that's a case where they had all kinds of crazy instrumentation failures going on. When they first called in, they were saying their compasses were going crazy and things like that. And then it was a little bit later on that a storm, rolled in, and then they weren't heard from again. So, yeah, did they pass into some other dimension somewhere? Uh, quite possibly, because nothing again has ever been found of anything from Flight 19.
And I think anything is possible at this point.
There you go.
Anything.
It's all up for debate. Yep.
Right. Um, Megan keeps asking questions I want to ask, so it's good that she keeps bringing these up.
Mhm.
But what's the difference between time travel and astral projection? That's what I was going to ask you as well, because people, or what it like when they sleep, what do they sleep? What is it?
Yeah. I think you can time travel while astral projecting. The astral projection is just basically taking your consciousness out of your body. So again, your consciousness is on the fourth dimension, and we refer to fourth dimension as time, but that is basically where your consciousness resides, and your body's in the third dimension. So to project, you're just basically taking that uh, consciousness where it is on the fourth dimension right now, usually stuck to your body, and unsticking it from your body and moving around. Now, I do believe that some people, and I would think it comes down to meditation and things like this.
Mhm.
I do believe some people can take that consciousness after they unstick it from their body and pass that on to a higher dimension, the fifth dimension, and be able to access different moments in time. And I believe that does happen while we sleep.
Your ladies
That
checked
we Oh, there's Jen. All right.
in. Sorry, I didn't
Hi,
mean to
Jen.
interrupt you, but I didn't want
Oh,
you to miss
good.
her saying hi.
No, you're good.
Go ahead.
Ah, um, yeah. So, what was I? So,
You're saying like you're saying like the body's on
yeah.
the
Um,
the fourth and our heads are. I mean,
right, right,
just our
right. So, yeah, moving
astral
through the different. Oh,
projection.
when we sleep, when we enter a dream state, again, it has more to do with our consciousness, and we go through different brainwave states, and so we're going through these different resonance patterns, different frequency patterns, and sometimes we're able to do things like access eternal knowledge. Sometimes we're able to get glimpses of future events. Sometimes we're able to see past events too, and we would just chalk that up to like a memory, or sometimes we get glimpses of past lives and things like this too. So we're able to tune into other lives that we've had. So our consciousness in that state is kind of able to move through some of these different areas. And yeah, so I hope that answered the question.
Do you think deja vu is a strong enough happening to maybe be like you're remembering, you know,
Yeah, a deja vu. Those are kind of interesting because sometimes they are like a fragment of a dream that a lot of times when we dream, and people are going to be really familiar with this. You might have a while you're in the middle of it, it's a really really vivid dream, and then when you wake up and you're like, wow, that was a crazy dream. You go to tell somebody about it, it's like I can only remember like three things that happened, even though it was like this really long dream and all this stuff happened. What in the world was it? You don't remember it all. So, deja vu sometimes is like a fragment from a dream that you can't quite remember. And you end up in that place. And
yeah.
you're like, wait a minute, this seems really familiar. It was likely, yeah, it was likely some sort of time travel incident where your consciousness did, move to another point in the future and saw something play out. But other times, I think they're like uh, you're you're going to a place where maybe a past life had actually spent some time and had actually existed, and when you go to that location, you're like, this seems really familiar. I've been
Mhm.
here before, and but in this current life you did not, and I think that's because your energy recognizes that area.
Hmm. Oh, wow. I wouldn't even know that's what I was doing if it happened. Um, the Paranormal Voice asks, how about
Mhm.
people that lose time? Would that be the same thing?
I mean, it's related, and I do have a chapter on UFO abductions and time loss within the book. So, in these cases, I think what's happening here, like when people are experiencing, time loss or some sort of abduction, and then experiencing the time loss, is they're essentially being moved into another dimension. And again, time is going to work differently within these other dimensions. So, what might seem like 5 minutes or what have you in the fifth or sixth dimension or beyond is really like days here. You take like Travis Walton, and he thought that he was gone for a few hours. That particular night that he went missing, it was actually 5 days. Same thing with Betty and Barney Hill. It wasn't days, but still it was like several hours. And you even go back into like uh, historic fairy lore and things like this. People would experience, going into the fairy realm, the same exact thing, where it seemed like a few minutes there dancing with the fairies when they were actually gone for hours. So this is a very interesting phenomenon. I think we're basically in those cases stepping into another dimension in which time and space works differently.
Hmm. Interesting. 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 And then Megan, I keep seeing all of these reported time travelers providing insight as to upcoming natural disasters. If true, we are screwed.
it's hard to substantiate some of those. Some of those where they'll find a historic photograph and be like, "Oh yeah, that's me back there," and it's like real fuzzy, and you barely make out any detail. You know, um, I, I I can't deny if they're saying this is their experience. I wasn't in their shoes. I can't sit there and
Right.
say no. But again, because of that, it's not my experience. I can't say yes to it either. It's
Right.
pointed to an old fuzzy photo from 1872 is that
Right.
doesn't prove anything to me. So it's difficult to really I don't know,
Well,
for
I
those
imagine,
reports to hold water.
yeah. I mean, well, I mean, because it's not something that is able to be, evidential support. You know what I mean? Like that, like documented. Really, you are going based off a lot of people's accounts. Like their
Yeah, yeah,
personal
and that's
account. Like, and it's got to be tough to, you know, it's got to be tough to try to. Or is it? I don't know. I mean, you might know when you're talking to somebody if they're just blowing smoke up your ass or if they really had this experience.
right.
You might be able
Yeah,
to
and
tell.
that's always been the difficult thing in this
Yeah,
field, when it comes to paranormal and supernatural. I mean, we all have our stories of experiences,
right.
and somebody, a skeptic could sit there and be like, "Oh, that's just hogwash. You're imagining it, or it was a bad dream, or maybe you're taking drugs, whatever." They come up with 100 excuses, to just kind of poo-poo away whatever
Mhm.
whatever your story is. So it's always been the challenge in this field. So how do you try to prove it? How do you try to substantiate that? And yeah, I mean, there are many anecdotal stories within this book and in all of my books, but that's where I'm trying to draw the different connections. Like, where can I find some of the science behind some of this, where we can say, okay, maybe these stories over here are legitimate because there are areas here in which science is coming through and saying, no, some of these things do exist. Like even the idea that we have a consciousness. And I do get into this a little bit within this book. Um, uh, Roger Penrose, who most people will, the name is like, okay, I kind of recognize the name. You might remember like the movie Inception, where they have the stairs that kind of keep going round and round. It's a
Oh, that
paradox.
movie. I love that
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. So those are known as the Penrose stairs, and that was based off of concepts that he had developed. He's a physicist, and he's done some work here in the field. And he'll say, look, religiously, I'm an atheist, but in our studies and in our research, and these are published peer-reviewed papers that show up in different scientific journals, where he's like, you know, the soul, the consciousness goes somewhere off into the cosmos after we die. He's like, I can't say where it goes. We haven't been able to show that scientifically, but there is a consciousness and it does go somewhere into the cosmos. So science is, and it's funny. I kind of chuckle because it's like, well, ancient civilizations and cultures and religions have been talking about that for thousands of years, and you're just now coming up with this. Okay, but still, it's nice to have that sort of backing from the scientific community.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had several, parapsychologists on. I've had several people that, have been on and they talk about all those experiments and stuff that they're
Mhm.
doing, and I think it's awesome, that it's coming together like that. However, I honestly don't think we're ever going to get that 100% proof of anything. I mean, unless we catch a Bigfoot or catch an alien or you know what I mean? Like you're never going to be able to catch a
Yeah.
ghost if we believe that they really are what they are, you can't catch one,
Yeah, or
So,
until we can actually start using some of these concepts, like
sure.
time travel. Because even there have been some experiments here down in Antarctica of all places, and they were experiments on neutrinos, which are supposed to be coming from space and microscopic sort of things, kind of down there on the atomic level. What in the world is that going to have to do with time and time travel and anything like that? Well, they were discovering neutrinos working the exact opposite way they were supposed to, coming up out of the Earth's core and this sort of thing. And I don't quite understand all the science behind it because I'm not a scientist, but you can read the paper, and that was published in, again, scientific journals, and they're you had the scientists themselves are saying, well, we believe this is indicative of a possible parallel universe running in reverse time. Like, these are scientists saying this. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's something that kind of help the case.
Yeah. I think that's it's fascinating. And I like, again, I think anything's possible. I would did want to ask you, I know we don't have that much time left, but what about visit dreams? The idea of a
Uh,
visit dream. Could
yeah.
this be, I mean, you hear of visit dreams. I believe I had a visit dream with my dad. It
Mhm.
wasn't a reoccurring, it was in a house I didn't know the house.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that had already happened. It was something though that I did put out there to the universe. The occurrence in my dream happened. After
Yeah.
I wrote it down and it happened.
I do
So
talk about dream visitations in the book.
mm,
Yeah, absolutely, and I do believe that they are real. I mean, that doesn't mean that every dream that you have of a particular person is going to be a
sure.
visitation,
No.
but you kind of know when it happens.
Yes.
There's a difference, and
Absolutely.
I believe that I had one of my grandparents that during a very difficult time that I was having, that they came back and they reassured me, which actually really helped me through this time because I just was not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's all, I'm not gonna get into all the details here because we'll have a few minutes, but it's all detailed in the book, and it was one of those things that helped me along, where my mindset was at the time, just total you know pretty much despair at the situation. There's no way that my subconscious at that time was just going to subtly conjure positivity.
Right.
This
Right.
it was a legit visitation. They felt so authentically real that it was these are my grandparents. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's no mistaking, like, it is definitely a different, I have had hundreds of dreams about my dad, and my dad was in there
Mhm.
in my dreams, but this was definitely,
Yeah. Yeah, you know when it happens.
and even after, like, when you wake up, you're still left with that emotional,
Mhm.
overpower emotional drive that you're just like, it's kinda hard to, calm yourself down for a couple, at least was for me anyway. It was hard for
Yeah.
me to kinda relax after that for a little bit. It was definitely, interesting, because even as I was like, it felt like I was trying to pull myself out of it, even though I didn't want to pull myself out of it, because I was hanging out with my
Right.
dad. You just think, I didn't want it to end.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, no, what's kind of funny with this particular dream was, I kept asking them, how are you guys? How you been doing?
yes,
That sort of stuff, because I was just so excited to see them. They're like, "Yeah,
yeah,
we're fine, we're good." Where we're at is very nice, but you need to
yeah,
realize that you're going to be okay.
yeah.
So
It was
yeah,
the
it was
same thing. I remember,
yeah,
like, I jumped up and Spidey hugged him, and
yeah,
I could feel the fabric on his uniform. I could feel, like,
mhm.
and I was like, "I'm so happy you're here. I can't believe you're here. How did you get here?" It was like, it
It's
felt
so
real.
authentically real. Yeah,
It
yeah,
was so
I know
real.
exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
And and the interesting thing was, and I didn't realize it at the time right away, because I think I was so emotionally in overdrive with the dream part of it, like, and actually,
Mhm.
like, feeling him and feeling his shirt and everything, like I was just so enthralled with that I didn't realize that as I was, here's the interesting part, really quick. In my dream, I was in a big huge room, and there was like, and the lights were off in the room I was in, but the lights were on in this other room where you would take 3 steps up. The door was cracked, so I could see the light coming in from the door, and the light
Okay.
was in there. So, but as I, that's how I slept at nighttime. I would sleep with our hall light on. The door was cracked open for our cat. So the scene looks similar in that instance, but
Okay.
that was it. So as I was pulling myself out, I saw my dad's silhouette in the doorway in my room.
Interesting. Okay.
I didn't, I know I saw that, but it was just overshadowed with what had just happened in my dream for the first, like, 25 minutes to 30 minutes of me trying to calm myself down, that I didn't realize, like, I saw a silhouette in my
Yeah.
doorway. Like, that's what it looked like.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was just like a shadow, like a black silhouette
Sure.
of him, but I knew it was him.
But it's him. Yeah. And see, again, that kind of adheres to, I mean, a couple books ago now with A Walk in the Shadows, where, one of the things I try to point out, throughout that book is these are not, shadows are not all evil, nasty, nefarious beings. I mean,
No.
that particular shadow there was your father.
Right.
So yeah. And
Yeah.
just, these entities, beings, whatever it is, sometimes as they're coming into our plane of existence, our dimension, they just can't get that full form going. We just it's their energy, and it's the way their energy manifests into this dimension and the way our eyes are able to see it, because we only see it to a very small, narrow band.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fascinating. That's a great story.
Yeah, it really is, and it's only happened once,
Mhm.
but it's enough. I was happy with that. But yeah, it was a very cool experience to have. Um, so Mike, tell everybody what you got coming up, where they can find your stuff
Yeah.
at, where they can your show. Talk about your show, please, really quick. When
Oh, absolutely.
like,
So yeah, every Wednesday night. Well, not this Wednesday because I'm going to be in Utah for Phenomenon, but yeah, every Wednesday night, connecting the universe. That's on my YouTube channel, Mike Ricksecker, or because we do an after show on the member side, you can join Connect the Universe portal.com. But yeah, for events, I have Phenomenon coming up this coming week in Vernal, Utah. And then I have, let's see, it's December 2nd at the Oliver House in Middleborough, Massachusetts, doing Connecting the Universe, the event.
oh, cool.
So yeah, so basically it's a 4-part series where we get into time travel like this. We get into consciousness, we get into stargates, ancient Egypt, Atlantis, a lot of different topics. That's a fun one. That's a 4-hour event. You think my throat's bad now. um let's see, I also have a presentation with Phoenix MUFON on December 9th,
Cool.
Conscious Light Expo in LA in February, and then Stargates of Ancient Egypt in April. It's April
That's
16th.
awesome. Yay. Um, I was gonna ask you too. Darn it, Mike. Can I just
Yeah,
ask you two more questions?
sure.
All right. I wanted to ask you about, do you think that I hope this doesn't open up a whole can where you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is gonna be a long conversation," but, um, 4-year-olds that claim to be people in the past.
Ah,
Do you
yeah,
believe
those are
that?
interesting. So I believe that they are, really tapped into, their previous lives. I mean, it's a legitimate phenomenon. There's,
So you don't
there's
think that
kids
would
that
be time travel? You think that they're
in in a
actually
in a sense, because they are, I think they're tuned into that life. So if all time is concurrent, past, present, and future, we're actually still at this current point in time living those lives, and their energy is such a state at that moment where they are actually able to see those past lives, and it's fascinating, the things that they were able to see and recite, and just because there's
pick
no way
out?
a 4-year-old would like know an address of where they lived and the family names, and there's no
Yeah,
way.
if they grow up in Illinois and he's picking out some place in Cabo and picks out a
Right.
picture, and I mean, there's like so many things. Like, it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Um, and then I forget my second question. Darn it all.
Well, we'll just have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. And it was such a pleasure having you on. I really appreciate you coming on and spending a Sunday hour with me, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Um,
always enjoy talking with you. We have a fun time.
we do. And I look forward to you coming on, and I also look forward to seeing you at maybe some of the events. I know I've crossed your path a couple of times, and
Right.
so very thankful for that. I think you're awesome, and
Likewise.
yeah, thank you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend.
You too. Yes. Yes. Enjoy the holiday. You doing a barbecue with my family. You do anything like that tomorrow?
I am relaxing. We're
Ah, there you go.
gonna take a motorcycle ride for a little bit, and then we're gonna come
Okay.
back and barbecue, and we're gonna do a bonfire tonight, and we're just gonna be hanging out at the house.
There you go. Awesome.
Yeah. All
Well, you
right.
have fun
Well,
then.
yes, I will. And you do tell Jen, thank you so much for letting me have you for an hour. She's a sweetheart. I love
Yes, she
seeing
is.
how happy you guys are. You know, I think it's great. I think it's awesome. Good for
Absolutely.
you. Good for you, Mike.
Thank you.
I will check in with you. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right. You have a great night.
Good night.
Bye bye.